everyone. I'm excited to be coming to you from Manifest, the Future of Logistics in Las Vegas this week. Here's a recap of some of the amazing conversations I've been having. Thanks for meeting us for coffee.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for meeting us for coffee. We are at Manifest, the Future of Logistics here in Las Vegas, and I am with Nate. Nate, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Steve?
Doing awesome. I actually have not had any coffee yet today, so I might need to change that soon since this is the Meet Me for Coffee podcast. Thank you for coming on and talking with me. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. I'm Nate Johnson, the founder and CEO of GLCS. GLCS is a management and technology consultancy. We also do managed services, managed IT for transportation and logistics providers, and we do complex integrations and some software development also for transportation and logistics providers.
Okay, so a lot in the technology space, right?
Oh.
A lot of technology going on there. I already have tons of questions that come to mind. Of course, it doesn't take a lot to get me going when we're talking about technology. Specifically, my background is going to be more in the 3PL space. And so thinking about, working in even especially a startup brokerage space in the last few years, how important connectivity was to us and visibility in all of our systems. But one of the first things that comes to mind that I want to talk to you about is in consulting work, because I'm in consulting now as well. I do sales and brand consulting. But one of the things that I run into a lot is people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So maybe they don't know how to even recognize that they have a need for something. And I have to imagine it's going to be the same with technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to understand what they need to know, you have to get to know them.
Right.
And as you know, it's largely about developing relationships and understanding your customer. So in many cases, this is a long-term goal or a long-term engagement. It's not something that you can. Everybody has their value that they immediately offer, but your long-term value is really where you benefit to your customers, to your partners. Someone can meet me and probably get some takeaways from that in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But 4 years from now, the value of that relationship is much stronger than what it is in a 30-minute conversation. So, when it comes to determining, what they need to know, what they should be doing, we have engagements that we work with people on that help identify that based upon questions, based upon a particular sequence of events or studies that you can engage with various different partners and customers to get to that.
So when you meet someone for the first time, a company, a brokerage, or a carrier, are you able to kind of assess their existing systems and their technologies and kind of benchmark that against what could maybe be industry standard or at least better for their types of operations? Are you able to give them a general idea of where they're at with how efficient their technology is for their business models?
We can usually give an industry benchmark, to some say, but to use the term industry standard today is a loaded statement.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's necessarily an industry standard because you have every company, let's use an 80-20 rule, although I don't know if an 80-20 rule even applies anymore. It comes down to what a company needs. And that, comparing yourself to someone else is a great way to spend a lot of money
That's
and
true.
not achieve what you actually need. The company next door is not, it may be a competitor, but don't chase them. Chase what is your bottom line, chase what you need. Don't run after, don't try to be Knight Swift. Don't try to be your best self. And that's the most important thing. And that's what we can help achieve, understanding the space. We go to 20 conferences a year, sometimes more. I'm at 7 through May. And that's because we study every possible solution that's out there, all up and coming ones. We know which ones are great, we know which ones are maybe not, and we know which ones that are niche. So if we come across that use case for someone that says, hey, we need this, we can bring that in front of them and say, try X, Y, and Z. And I think that's the important approach to technology is not everyone can spend that amount of time doing it. And if you are a brokerage or a truck line that's trying to research what they should be using, you can spend days, weeks.
And it's frustrating.
It's
So frustrating because I think that if you Google anything around TMS, API, EDI, the only results you're going to be getting are like sponsored advertisements or
Cloud,
their
Mercury
websites
Gate,
or their
Tide,
blog
Rose
posts
Rocket,
that they
yeah.
wrote about their own
Yeah.
stuff. And so it's obviously everyone's going to claim that they have the right fit for you too. So I think what you guys are doing, like playing in that neutral third party space where you can make honest recommendations based on their business types, is so important. And when I was part of founding a 3PL, I had to choose. I mean, I had probably just on the TMS side alone, we probably looked at 15 to 20 demos, and I'm just trying to make a selection. And I didn't know you at the time. Where
Right,
were you?
right,
No?
right.
So just
Yeah.
it's an overwhelming decision, and I think a lot of people also get pushed into maybe thinking that one system operates really well, but then they start to grow and they start to work and they figure out that, for example, maybe it has really poor integration capabilities with your financial software or how you're managing your books or your accounts receivable. So and that can be a massive resources waste and just time consuming lift when you have poor connectivity across your departments as well. So do you guys try to help people step back and maybe look at the big picture and evaluate how everything fits together, not just how one system fits?
Yeah, we do. It's called a vendor selection engagement. But even more to that, right now I'm putting out a series of videos on LinkedIn and on YouTube free. Just baseline about selecting and implementing technology.
Yeah.
Just some basic steps using our project methodology around. If you want to do this on your own, here's the methodology that we use. Now, I can't give you my 30 years and our almost 1,000 years of experience on our team, but I can give you our methodology and our step-by-step process, and we're happy to do that. So right now I've got 3 6 to 10 minute long videos out there. It's taking through our assess phase right now. The 4th video is recorded but not put out.
Yeah.
I was doing a video a day and then I realized, holy cow, this is a lot of work. But the 4th video should be out next week. I was shooting for this week. I really want
Now I know how that goes. I know how that goes. It's just aimed at educating people, right?
Yeah,
and again,
right.
in that non-biased way, so that people can make those right decisions.
And then, when you do that, it's so important to get that upfront work. Lots of companies want to cut corners
Sure.
and not do that upfront work. But upfront work saves you pain and money in the long term. So getting the correct solution purchased is so important, because if you get the wrong one done, you lose not only money, not only time, not only pain to your employees, but pain to your customers.
Sure.
And then you lose that authenticity, that stock with your staff saying, I made a correct decision on a tech purchase. And how many times do you get to do that before it impacts culture?
So yesterday we were at the networking event here, the kickoff for Manifest, and I ran around like a crazy person trying to interview as many brokers as I could. And I was asking brokers a very simple question. And the question was, as a third-party logistics company focused on growth in 2024, what has to be your top priority? Somebody did say, I believe somebody said technology, but 2 or 3 people said our people. And they said that they need to retain and attract strong talent, because the people are ultimately what's going to impact their customers the most. And one of them actually went as far as to expand on that and explain how you have to give your people the resources they need to be successful, productive, and happy. It's not just culture, right?
Yeah.
Like culture is a big part of it, but the culture, I mean, it contributes to culture.
They're all together.
So you have to have everything that they need to be able to be content and productive and efficient with their days. So, what are your thoughts on all of this? Because I think
Sure.
technology is critical. Like, if you have
Yeah.
poor systems, people don't like their jobs.
Now,
They're
now you're
frustrated.
getting into my space. So
Okay.
now you're getting into what I mean, I'm passionate about technology, but I'm really passionate about leadership, culture. These are things that go back 20 or 30 years. 'Cause prior to technology, I used to lead fairly large businesses. And so this is stuff that I love. And I love that I'm now able to look at GLCS that way because we're getting bigger and it's not about the grind as much as it is about shepherding the business. So, and I do advise people on this all the time. So, people, process, technology,
Yes.
and somewhat in that order. Uh, you know, people are everything. But if you don't have culture, you don't really have people. If you have a poor culture, and we've seen this, I'm not going to name company names, but we've seen this. You don't keep people if you don't have a good culture. And you can have a mediocre culture, but if you have a great culture, you keep people, you grow people, they stay with you their whole career. And if they do leave, that's okay. But they're going on and they're thinking back on you fondly. And they take your culture and they bring it somewhere else. And if you ever call on them, they're still part of your organization.
Yes. Yes.
So you have that. The technology needs to support culture, or culture needs to support technology. And as a founder, uh, you always look at, I'm the one that seeded the culture, but ultimately the employees own the culture.
Sure.
And so I can shepherd culture, but I cannot create it. I'm no longer the owner of that culture. It's the employees that do it. So I can influence it greatly by my attitude and by technology that I purchase and by all this. And if I make poor choices and I act poorly, then that's going to have a great impact. I may have one of the greatest impacts to culture at my organization. But and so that all comes together around the people, and the people are the most important component of any
Sure.
business.
I agree.
So,
I tell people all the time, this is a B2B services industry, and
Right.
services are only successful when the people performing the services are good. There's no product many times. There's no tangible thing that we're selling. It's the people that we're quite literally, they're the face of the company to these customers. And so for them to be able to be there and give 100% of their effort to their clients, they need to feel fulfilled and have
Yeah.
that good culture and that support system
Right.
within their own workplace. And I also think that this would be my challenge to leaders in the asset space, 3PL space, whatever space it is, where if you don't really know if things could be better with your technology stack and how you're setting things up, or maybe you know it's bad. A lot of people know it's bad, and they're just like, yeah, but we work around it. We know how to work around it. But typically, and most commonly in this industry, your employees are making some type of variable commission, compensation, bonuses based on productivity, performance, revenue, gross margins, you name it. And a lot of those things, when you see people deploy better technology, it increase. And so your people are literally putting more money in their paychecks, in their wallets, and they're going to be happier for that, and they're going to have an easier time
Right.
doing it.
Right. And there's certainly a lot of that. I think the other thing is you have salespeople and you have people who have great spins on things. So sometimes we deployed the new technology, but is it actually better, or is it just better packaged, better marketed,
Better looking, maybe.
Better looking? Is it better, or
Right.
is it just better looking and
Right.
better? Is it just a better polished thing than what you have? Even though what you have is just fine. And that's something that I always say: don't always compare what someone else is doing. Look at your bottom line. And yes, having a nice, bright, shiny new package,
Sure.
new software package is great. And you want to be cutting edge.
Yes.
Or at least somewhere close to
Cutting
the
edge within what's realistic for your price range.
Right.
And I think that that's also what makes you guys probably a great consulting partner, and something that I even have to try to do with sales tools when I'm working with my clients on sales side is, yes, that platform would be great. It's excellent. I love it.
Right.
It's very great. It's also thousands of dollars, and this one is, just as comparable, and will get everything you need done until we reach a point where that investment makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely correct. And there's organizations out there that have tens of millions of dollars that they spend on R&D.
Yes.
Let them do what they do. They're the big guys.
Yes.
Let them pave the way for the people who don't have that.
Sure.
Let them figure it out. let the organizations do what they do. Let our smaller applications do what they do, and let people pave the way for you, and figure out what fits best. You don't have to be the early adopter at everything. That also being said, if you are comfortable and you're tech savvy and you want to be the early adopter because you want to be that influencer to that particular vendor, then choose one or two, but don't choose 20, because there are some people that do that too, that want to be the early adopter on everything
And go a little crazy.
and then they're very hard to manage. And so if something doesn't work, whose problem is it? You have all these early adoptions, and something's not functioning appropriately. So certainly that's a thing.
Yes.
It does become, circling back to people. If you're always trying to bring in the latest, greatest thing, your people do get tired of that too. So
Absolutely.
trying to string together the this AI, that AI, this AI, that AI. That's where the comical AI thing kind of comes from.
I think I'm kind of, yeah, we're not going to talk about AI today.
Right.
I can't do any more AI. I think there's a lot of that discussed here at Manifest, I do believe. So people can get their fill here this week. Well, Nate, it's been a pleasure talking
Absolutely.
to you. I appreciate you so much for joining me. And if people are interested in understanding more about what you do and the services that you guys offer, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Sure, a couple different ways. Follow us on LinkedIn, GLCS, or Nate Johnson. And then we also do have a podcast as well, but it's beyond just podcasts. We're putting out a lot of that content that I was talking about. Driving Forward PC on YouTube, or you can see us on LinkedIn as well. But look for a lot of that technology content. And
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone who's interested in understanding, where your technology lines up currently, what technology might fit you well. Go check out their content. You can see a lot about what they're about on YouTube, on their LinkedIn, and then reach out, of course, with any questions. He's one of the easiest guys to talk to, guys. I promise. So you'll enjoy that conversation. But thank you so much, everyone, for meeting us for coffee. And I'm here with Curtis. Curtis, can you please introduce yourself?
Gladly. Thanks for having me, Samantha.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, this is really cool. It's a neat idea.
Yes.
So Curtis Garrett, I am longtime LTL, passionate. I call myself User X in the spirit that we're all, doesn't matter what part of the market you're in, we're all users of the experience, the market, the highs, the lows, the pain. There's a little
The
bit
pain,
of pain.
a little bit.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry, specifically deep in LTLs, for 16 years, spent 8 years at Old Dominion, did a bunch of different things, drove for a year, which was really awesome, just getting out there on the front line, seeing the customer experience. And then I've been the last 8 years on the broker side, consulting. Got a lot of different projects in the go right now, from building some technology to education and training.
Yes.
Here under Understand LTL as a part of Manifest, and we've been holding mastermind events to get LTL leaders in the same room, just like a small, intimate roundtable discussion. There's seemingly a need for that.
Yes.
Instead of the big conference experience. And then we do online training. We have some standalone courses, as well as we're starting to partner with TIA, powering their LTL education, partnering with a few carriers, with Navix, a freight audit company. So doing a lot of interesting things, and it's all in the name of just making LTL just a more user-friendly experience. I don't think that you should have to spend 5 to 10 years in an industry to get it, without.
Oh man, yeah, and let me tell you, I know you know this about me, but I cut my teeth in this industry originally in LTL operations.
Yeah.
And I did with ABF Freight, and I was at one of our 24/7 distribution centers doing all the different roles there and training and that. But it probably took me 6 months on the operations side, and then I switched into sales, and I thought I knew LTL, but then you go into the sales side, and then you have the tariffs and the all of the accessorials and all of this, and it is such a complex part of the logistics space when you compare it to almost any other mode type. I think international's up there with me too, and all of the different eco terms and everything, but then you have LTL, and in the domestic trucking space, there's just so much nuance to it, and think what you guys are doing is long overdue and very needed, because on a very basic level, understand LTL. Not a lot of people can say they really understand it well.
Right. Yeah. Just straight to the point. That's the mission. And what I try to do is get out of the weeds, get out of the 8,000 different, classification codes
Sure.
and all these NMFCs, and they all serve a purpose. But I try to extract the framework from everything. One of my favorite examples is talking about how most LTL carrier costs roll up to either space, time, or risk.
Sure.
So if you think of whether it's something they're doing a delivery, or pickup, delivery, the cross docking, the administrative side, it's space, time, or risk. So that seems to strike a chord with people, and they can kind of make the mental connection a little easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, okay, so in the LTL space right now, I want to ask you this, because admittedly, I've been living very heavily in the full truckload space myself, so I need a little bit of a refresher too.
You're doing a great job there, by the way.
Thank you. I would like to kind of just ask, I think LTL made all sorts of headlines, obviously, in recent months with the bankruptcy and closure of YRC, one of the longest standing LTL carriers. And it's already kind of died down. Things, we're not talking about that as much. A lot of their terminals are being auctioned and sold off, and that's all just going to be done and over with, and people are moving forward. But where does that leave the LTL market as a whole right now? What's kind of the lay of the land in this part of the industry?
Lay of the land is a good term to use, because I think we're in a long-term building strategic phase. So you're right. Last year with Yellow closing, kind of just caused a chaotic event, chaotic year. Really, with that, as well as the second Black Swan event with Estes being hacked, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They recovered very nicely, very quickly, did a good job, but that was still a top 5 carrier that was, not fully out of the picture, but they were very limited for close to a
Offline.
month. Yeah, offline.
Offline.
Exactly.
Literally.
So those two events like that happening that close together is like a once in every 30-year
right.
event or year. So that was just a peak in chaos, and I believe that anytime there's chaos in the LTL industry, the carriers have an easier time controlling the narrative.
Sure.
Since there are no industry, transparent pricing metrics.
Yeah.
On the truckload, it's all who tells the best story, essentially.
It is. Yeah. I mean,
so-
I was in LTL sales, Curtis. I get it.
Yeah.
I know. I was fed
You
the
know
stories.
how to slap a 10% increase on the table and say, well, Eddie Sorg says the cost is going up. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting market. But now that we're on kind of the back end of that, all these big, these other big players, XPO, Saia, Estes, Knight Swift, they're buying up properties, and it's a long-term view. Like Saia reportedly is investing $1 billion in 2024 alone on CapEx.
Okay.
That's not a normal year, right?
No.
This is long-term stuff, because at the end of the day, whoever owns the most strategically placed dock doors in an LTL carrier network is going to win. It's not trucks drivers. It's not all the other important things. It's where do you have properties? Where do you have hubs so you can consolidate and create better density? And that's the race. So
I think we could almost draw a comparison between the LTL space and the full truckload space, because I think a term that gets tossed around a lot is that, over 80% of trucking authorities are owner operators or less than 5 trucks. But the reality is that only about 20, maybe 30% of on-highway capacity falls in that size range. And so really it is your mega carriers and your bigger players who take the lion's share of the available freight that's out there. And I think the same can be said in the LTL space, right? Where if you are one of the larger players, you have more resources, more equipment, more footprint, you're going to be able to take kind of like that, call it like first dibs or lion's share of what's available in the LTL freight marketplace.
Yep.
But we just, for some reason, there's still so much fragmentation and that exists in the truckload space, but we don't really see that in the LTL space. Like the barrier to entry seems maybe so high that we just continue to have the same players. And if anything, I think we've lost more players than we've gained new in the last 5 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we define, a standard LTL carrier as, let's say, at least 10 terminals, 50 trucks or whatever. Like, there's not too many of those entering the market.
Right.
And these larger ones, this oligopoly of an industry or a market, they're there to either survive and thrive or to shut down. Like, they don't have a lot of new competition. But at the end of the day, like, I think there's a huge opportunity for technology networks. Like what Flock Freight's doing is interesting.
Yes.
If you can gather up and bundle together capacity, and as technology improves and the friction to around visibility and just transactions flowing between multiple layers of different companies, as that dissipates, it gets cheaper and it just gets easier, the flow of information, you're going to see more of them. There's more final mile, middle mile, like all these networks being drawn up, and they're legitimate players, or they're becoming more and more legitimate. One real quick point to what you said about just the pure statistics around like the number of carriers out there, right? And how many trucks, are they owner operator or not? I think there's a lot of stuff that's hard to quantify. Like, these big players in the LTL market have so much momentum and brand recognition
Yes.
and technology and reach. So it's not a one-to-one.
Yes.
Like, it's not like these guys here have a total of this many dock doors, this many trucks, and then you've got 100,000 little guys that equal that. The fragmented does not equal the macro level carrier.
And just by nature of what LTL is, with this kind of hub and spoke model, you can't even run. You can't have a hub and spoke model if you only have a hub and no spoke, or like so.
Yeah.
It's just you can't be small really
Yep.
and enter the LTL space. And I mean, I know that I think probably the smallest scenario I could think of is maybe consolidators who are running regional routes around a state, putting it all into a full truckload, and then running out the truckload and then calling it LTL services, right? But that's not, by definition, what we're talking about when we're talking about like that traditional LTL where...
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, when things get tight in the market, the less control you have over the assets on the ground, the harder it's going to be to keep steady pricing. Like, we've even seen, purchase transportation for the line haul segment of a lot of these big LTL carriers. It's kind of something that's hidden behind the curtain.
Sure.
But I won't name names, but there are some out there that are top 10 LTL carriers that use a much higher percentage of outsourced line haul, and it shows in their transit times, in their claims. There's more touch points, and then in their pricing, there's bigger swings to their pricing.
That's also dictated by unions. So union
That's
carriers...
an interesting subject.
Union carriers are not allowed to outsource more than X% of their purchase transportation to take advantage of some of the benefits there that can present themselves with that. But since I said the word, since I brought up the U word, why don't we go ahead and I'd like to just ask a simple question there too. I think that honestly, long, slow, painful, drawn out death of YRC that it was, which was, and the union's the bad guy and then YRC is the bad guy. And that was such a public debacle, really, that I don't know. I think it got a lot of negative press directed towards unions. And obviously we had UPS was sold to T-Force Freight, right? And they were union. YRC, and then is ABF the only other? Are there only 3 these days?
2 now that YRC is gone.
Yeah, okay.
ABF. So here's my theory on that. YRC, like the yellow group, they were, of the 3 remaining union carriers, they were really the only one that was still just pure play LTL freight.
You're right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
you're
so
right.
they back to the control word, the C word. Like, if you have this strong force, whether it's for you or against you, dictating certain things that you can do, the way LTL is evolving, you've got to be nimble and flexible and change your operations as needed.
Yes.
And if you're always running into like a boilerplate contract, you just can't keep up with the market.
Yes. I mean, but I also don't want to, like, and this is me, an outsider looking in, but I wouldn't want to put all of that blame on union contract difficulties, because I think they were also behind with technologies. And that would have been a really expensive lift to see improvement there. But then also just like the culture and reputation and people like that they had kind of established over many years. That wasn't earned overnight, right? And then you're right, they actually
Good or
had
bad reputation.
more so bad, I think.
Yeah.
But they actually had a full truckload brokerage division.
Right.
But I'm not sure that it was much of any.
It grew quickly.
It did,
Yeah.
but then it was just, I think they were struggling to your point, diversify revenue. Like you look at those other players, they had massive revenue generators in several different mode types, and so when you become like totally dependent on the margins in the LTL space in such a volatile last 5 years, and you have other issues as well presenting themselves, and you mix in the union, I think it was just a recipe for disaster. But I really think that that's a great call out, is that a lot of companies now are exploring making sure they're leaning into mode diversification and having multiple different ways of making that revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what ArcBest is doing. I know a little more about them than I do TFI, who bought T-Force.
Right.
TFI is a monster company with, I think hundreds of both asset, non-asset-based carriers.
So it's definitely just an addition
They're
to their large
diversified,
portfolio.
right?
Yeah.
And they can all, if they do it right, they can use each other. There's a lot of efficiencies there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's what it came down to. You're right about you can't outrun a bad reputation. I mean, Roadrunner's really trying hard to do that right now.
You know what? Actually, that would be a whole nother. We're going to run out of time here, but I've been wildly impressed with their approach to that.
I have too.
I think they've actually, like, in my mind, they won me over.
Yep.
Like they've changed my mind as to who they are and what they do, and I think that their CEO stepped out and led publicly by example.
Yep.
And that's been really fun to watch.
I love what they're doing. So, yeah, they still came in last on the Mastio, but that's
Yes.
shipper.
Yes.
That's subjective. Like
Sure.
the last subset of people that change their mind on a carrier reputation are all the people here. It's all the shippers.
Yes.
Because they remember every miss.
Every single time they were
From
burned.
years ago.
Yep. From 10 years ago.
Yeah, I wrote an article recently saying, like, shippers have like elephant brains.
Yes, they do.
But Roadrunner, I love what Chris is doing.
Yes.
He's out there. He's just documenting what they're doing, and not to disparage too much on Yellow, but I didn't see their CEO really visible through all that. He went on Fox News a couple times. Like, I feel like to turn that force of all this media attention,
Yes.
like, get out there with some camera crews, get in your terminals.
And I mean, obviously I do sales and brand consulting. I'm really big on kind of abandoning this idea of traditional marketing, and not completely, but leaning heavier into establishing brand recognition through content and just through being present and adding value. And I love, that's why I said, like, they've won me over, because it almost seemed to me like an insurmountable task. Like, there's no way.
Yep.
But then they did. I think they're doing it, and I think they're doing well. And so I think you have that perfect example of, hey, you can go this way, and you can end up like, YRC and how that kind of played out, or you can go this way.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think that Roadrunner was not in a position where they probably would have been the next foreclosure or bankruptcy or whatever that was. They would have been going out too, eventually, if they didn't turn that ship around. But kudos, because they recognized that.
Right.
And they turned it around, I think.
Yeah,
So.
they've got a lot of different ingredients, like some new capital behind them, some new people, the rebrands. I kind of like how they kept the name, but they changed everything else about the brand.
Sure.
And then just this long haul metro to metro approach with their network. It's a much smaller subset of the LTL market.
Yes.
Most carriers are trying to be everything to everybody, and they said, we're not going to be.
Yes.
We're not going to deal with all these remote rural deliveries, pickups. Let's just consolidate as much as we can in the bigger markets and shuttle that back and forth, the way Daylight's been doing it for years. And has done a great job.
I think focusing on what you're really good at and sticking to a core competency is also very important. And then the reality is, even though we have only so many carriers and they all run similar networks, a lot of them have certain types of niches that they do better than the others too. And I think they've learned to kind of identify with that and lean into that as well too.
Absolutely.
To market themselves that way. Well, Curtis, we are running out of time. I think we're going to have to probably Meet Me for Coffee needs a little more LTL blended in. So this might have to happen again
Everybody
sometime
needs a little more
soon.
LTL.
I mean, I suppose. If anyone is interested, let's say they have questions about LTL, they want to understand LTL a little bit better.
Yeah.
How could they find you, connect with you, get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, or I've got all my different projects linked on my personal site. So that's curtisgarrett.co. And you can find anything I'm working on, whether it's Freight Plus, a managed trans provider I'm helping. Rate Hero is LTL pricing focused. Understand LTL is training and education. I've got some other secret stuff coming out here like around May, so look for that.
Secret stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some LTL technology.
We like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have to
This
meet
was awesome.
soon. Thanks, guys, for meeting us for coffee.
Hi guys, I'm here with Shannon Breen, the co-founder and co-CEO at Freightvana at Manifest, the future of logistics. This is day 3, the last day here wrapping up. But I had a conversation with someone yesterday about drop trailers, and brokers getting into the trailer space made me think of you, because you guys have kind of maybe been the trailblazers, the OG vision, if you will, for this mixed model. So I wanted to ask you a question today, and just can you kind of explain a little bit more to me what the vision is and maybe some of the feedback that you guys are getting from your clients, the shippers, on why power only and drop trailers is working right now in the brokerage space?
Yeah, I think why it's working, or it will work, right? I think where shippers are at is they want that equipment, right? They want the drop trailers, and typically the drop trailers are dominated by the largest fleets in the country, right? And that's an access point for the largest fleets, and they've always sold into that, right? And so when we think about building our ubiquitous kind of trailer pool and being able to utilize it, what we're really tapping into is the 1 to 100 truck fleets that make up most of the trucking capacity, right? And so it's interesting, we're at this conference, there's so many tech providers, but they really, from the dynamics of transportation, I tell them like, hey, 85% of trucking capacity is made up of those carriers less than 100 trucks, and they're like, oh, I never really realized that, right? Because you only know the big names. So essentially what the shippers love is it's an ability to bring those small to medium-sized regional fleets into the fold. It's an ability for us to use our tech and our asset-based management experience to provide levels of efficiency, build networks, which is kind of that evolution that we're on, which is really exciting. I get a lot of people that, at a conference be like, oh, we want to run trailers. I think there's always like a cautionary tale of like, A, it's really expensive. B, be prepared for an entire different type of operation.
Sure.
Right? You have to build your team completely different to manage that level of assets. Our team is built from that environment, coming from one of the largest truckers in the country. And so between the kind of the technology package, which we think is unique that we're building, and then that old experienced asset knowledge that we have, we think we're well positioned. So I think from a shipper perspective, you get all the efficiencies, right? You get drop and hook, unloading times, you're taking away detention and stuff like that, because people are just leaving that trailer and moving on. And other people have tried this, right, and are doing it in our space. We just feel like we're doing it in this really unique fashion, in an independent structure, right? I used to do it at one of the largest trucking companies in America, but for us to do it in this independent nature and the way that we're doing it with the partnerships we have, I think that's what the shippers are most excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for explaining that more. What does the future of this look like? What is the growth plan right now for Freightvana as far as trailers? Are you guys going to continue to add in 2024? And what's that growth plan?
Yeah, metered additions in 24, right? It's still and we went really big and heavy in our initial stages, and we're just kind of trying to chart our course through this market, right? At the end of the day, you have to be super disciplined. For our business, that's kind of the culture and the build, the mindset we have. So we're never going to get out over our skis, right? And so, yeah, we're waiting like everybody else for a little bit of a equilibrium type market to be able to invest heavier into. But I'd tell you, our strategic partners are lining up, the ones we have and the ones that are kind of looking to join us on the journey. And we're charting a course of having thousands and thousands of trailers in this network. And that's the really exciting vision of what we build. And we always tell people, like, it's not about the top markets and the bottom. It's like there's this spot in the middle where this looks really good and works well for the shipper, works well for us and certainly the carriers that don't have access to this type of freight. And so, and in a full efficient perspective, you're lowering their cost. Because now you're taking the trailer out, and so they don't have the maintenance, they don't have the repairs, and so they get the fluidity, the access, and ideally some lower costing. That's the give back to the small to medium-sized carriers that quite honestly don't have the access and maybe the capital resources that we have and will have in the future.
Awesome. Shannon, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm with Jordan Graft, the founder and CEO at Highway, one of my favorite companies in the industry right now. Jordan, I want to go ahead and ask you a question coming from a broker's perspective. I work a lot with 3PLs and brokerages. And so the 2024 market is hyper competitive. We've been in kind of this lower market cycle, but there's a lot of optimism that things might start changing this year. And so let's say things change and the spot market rates start to come up. For some brokers, that might mean that they actually start to see margin erosion if they're operating contractual awards in those transactional marketplaces. I know that Highway is doing a lot of awesome things in the fraud space, of course, but you guys actually have some pretty cool tools that help brokers secure carrier capacity. So can you talk to me a little bit about how maybe that would be a good fit to what that would look like for a broker to start introducing more regular capacity on those contractual awards?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this market, it's really important that their carrier sourcing strategy doesn't stop, right? It's easy to get carriers, but building those relationships with the carriers and the lanes that you need that capacity. So in Highway, we leverage the ELD data and the inspection data that we have to help brokers find carriers with the right types of trailers, so reefer, flatbed, dry van, and then also make sure they have the right insurance that they need. So now more than ever, I would, as you have bandwidth and capacity in the carrier sales function, spend time building those relationships and understanding what their capacity looks like throughout the week and in those lanes. So super important to do this today because whenever the market gets hot again, those conversations are much harder to have with carriers. And it's a good time. They're willing to have those discussions and willing to also augment their network more than they would before to meet your needs on the demand side.
What size of carriers do you guys have data on or connectivity with that people are going to be able to interact with through Highway?
Yeah, so we have every carrier that has motor authority in the U.S. We have 160,000 carriers that have registered with Highway, and we have really good data on location evaluation for about, I'd say, 120,000. So that gives you a really broad range to be able to make a sourcing decision. And again, like we said, the most valuable carrier broker relationships are the ones that are formed around, continual demand. So not just like I have a load today, but I have loads every Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so that's always an opportunity for discussion. You're always going to get a motor carrier willing to have a discussion with you about dedicated, not necessarily dedicated, but contractual loads over time. So, you can find all kinds of carriers in Highway, and now carriers are much more familiar with Highway and understand, why they're getting calls from brokers that they don't know, and that's, we've had to help overcome that, but in the end, they're looking for revenue and opportunities, and it's just helping raise their awareness, especially those small carriers that don't have a website, don't have a sales function. This helps really raise their awareness and get them in front of more brokers with good loads.
Yeah. Speaking from experience, I was working with a brokerage and we had an RFP, an enterprise RFP. And we were able to connect with, over the course of the 2 weeks we were working on that, 180 carriers that were interested in bidding committed lanes on that RFP through Highway. All through Highway. So it was a really amazing experience. If you're a broker right now in the 2024 freight market, one of the best things you can do to help protect your margins as the spot market starts to change is try to get out of that transactional marketplace and start exploring partnerships with committed carriers. And I think Highway is a perfect tool for helping with that. So thanks
very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
Yes.
Y'all have a great day.